Good morning. We're thrilled today to have a discussion about integrating international nurses. And this is really a clinical roundtable where we are going to talk about all the different aspects about bringing international nurses into an organization. My name is Laura Messineo. I'm the Chief Nursing Officer for Worldwide Health Staff. And I'd like to introduce my colleagues that have agreed to join us. Joel Moore, who's the Chief Nursing Officer at Mercy One, welcome. And Barbra Turner, the System Director of Nursing Practice and Professional Development at Bon Secours Mercy Health. I'm going to turn it over to Joel first. He can tell you just a little bit about his career, and also then I'll turn it over to
Good morning.
Barbra.
Thanks for having me, Laura. We just appreciate your partnership and working together. I am a chief nurse here in Davenport, Iowa, where I have practiced for 26 years. I'm also on the board of directors for American Organization for Nursing Leadership. So how we address workforce issues is top of mind for me. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Joel.
Hi.
Barbra.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thanks, Laura, for having me. Really excited to be here today and about our partnership. It's been a phenomenal partnership. So I am the System Director for Nursing Practice and Professional Development for Bon Secours Mercy Health. I've been with that organization about 25 years, always within the professional development, nursing practice, magnet program excellence space. And so we do a lot with our international nurses as far as onboarding, looking at workforce, looking at pipeline. So just really excited today to be present and have some of these conversations.
Thank you, Barbra. Thank you both of you taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Next slide, please. So we're going to kick this off by talking about how long each of these organizations have been bringing international nurses to their organization. At a high level, Worldwide Health Staff has been recruiting international nurses and bringing them to the United States for over 26 years. We've got an amazing pool of candidates across the world that are anxious to come to the United States and practice nursing. So I'm going to turn it to Joel to talk a little bit about how long you've been bringing international.
Sure, this has been part of our workforce strategy for several years. We've really ramped things up over the past 5 years, knowing that this takes time to bring over new colleagues from across the globe into our workforce. We've really worked hard at partnering with Worldwide over the past 3 years and have lots of successes that I'll talk about later. But this has been part of our, I'll call it our rear view mirror strategy, where we're looking for immediate solutions to gaps, but we have this now as part of our long-term solution so that we can be ensured to incorporate folks into our community that represent our community, which is a part of what Worldwide does, is bring people in who live here and work here. So it's been at least 5 years now as part of our immediate strategy, and we know it's going to be another 5 or 10 year journey, probably plus more. Yeah.
Thanks, Joel. Barbra?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Joel's. Really, international nurses is really ingrained into our hiring philosophies and our workforce pipeline. Just to kind of give a little context, our organization was 2 independent organizations. We had a legacy Bon Secours arm and a legacy Mercy arm. And we came together and merged in 2019. And that was really also when our partnership with Worldwide began. But prior to that, we really have had a long-standing tradition of bringing international nurses into our 2 arms of our respective organizations. With the legacy Bon Secours side, we've been bringing international nurses there for about 30 years. And then on the legacy Mercy side for about 15. So it really has become part of our workforce strategy. And I have to say that, with our merger and then our collaboration with Worldwide, we were really ahead of the game with ensuring the pipeline, especially in a, COVID and post-COVID world, because we really started recruiting a very large international population and put in some requests late in 2019. So we were kind of ahead of the game especially during that time frame where everybody was really looking for international nurses. we're really lucky. We have a director of our vendor management system and contingent workforce operations. His name is Vince. He's amazing. He truly is an expert at hiring international nurses and working with worldwide and making sure that we have a really great pipeline. So that is part of our workforce strategy when it comes to our international nurses.
Thank you, Barbara. And is a piece of this related to worldwide, the fact that it's a direct hire model, that these nurses are your employee, yes, being paid fair market value. Does that add a different element of why this is so successful?
I think it does. It's not that that feel of an agency nurse, right? They are part of your organization. They are part of your team. They are no different than any other nurse that you might recruit from your local pool of candidates or your national pool of candidates. It just happens to be an international pool of candidates. So it definitely kind of has a different feel to it.
Yeah, I think in addition to I think what Barbara's talking about too is like renters versus owners, and they are owners. And I think that our workforce that steps in alongside, or that they step alongside of, they think of them as long-term colleagues. And so there's just a different esprit de corps that's built when you have folks that come in as direct hires to say, we want to be here, so let's hang out outside of work, and we're going to be here for the long haul. So let's try and figure out how this all works together.
That's awesome. Thank you. Next slide, please. So you talked a little bit about, it's part of your workforce planning. And is this part of one of the key aspects that you've hardwired into your process? We know in the United States that we've had a nursing shortage, probably I've been a nurse for 32 years, and there's always been a shortage since I got out of school. And we just don't seem to be able to bring enough nursing students through schools because of the number of schools. And then there's challenges with the 1 to 2 years of nurses coming out of school, and turnover rates, and just the fact of the aging workforce. How do you see the international recruitment really closing that gap?
Barbara, how about you go first this time?
Sure, absolutely. So we definitely see them as a benefit and a strategy to help to close that gap. We already talked about how they're hired directly, they're full-time associates, they're part of that team from the moment of capture, which means that they really kind of have that same philosophy of thought, and they become enculturated into the organization. And so they're less likely to leave, right? It's less likely to kind of have that churn and burn mentality, renters versus owners, as Joel put it. And we really feel that the international nurses are great. They're effective and essential for being able to close those gaps, especially in some of those hard to fill areas, right? Like medical surgical nursing or intermediate levels of care nursing, where we seem to have a lot of turnover. What we've done with our international population is really place them in those areas, either to begin with, to grow them into other areas, or to remain in those areas. And it really has been a great strategy to kind of help close that gap. We also, with our international nurses, have been able to kind of help to maintain that pipeline by being proactive, and so it's not just an immediate need. It is an actual proactive strategy where we're forecasting out and looking, okay, so for this quarter, we might need this many. For this year, we might need this many. So really being able to have some of those proactive forecasting, and then figuring out how long is it going to take for us to get those hires in and getting them onboarded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a key piece, Barbara, like that long-term planning, because we know that in the immigration journey of a nurse, once they've accepted an offer, is somewhere between 18 to 24 months. Joel, how does your organization plan for that, right? As far as that forecasting and then planning for that 18 to 24 months before an international nurse comes over?
Yeah, we are constantly in the forecasting mode. You mentioned the nursing shortage, and that's a global problem. It's not just a United States problem. So we're seeing migration from here to Europe and other places, as well as seeing migration to the United States, as well as, our new workforce that's entering, they want to be to grow and move and stretch. I think, I know even 25 years ago, I worked in 5 different places my first 10 years of nursing. And I don't think I think that's the same thing that we're seeing with this newer generation, but they're moving a little bit more quicker than we did. So we're leaning into our international workforce to bring a lot of stability, because they're coming and they're staying in the community and not moving. So they're almost becoming part of our core staff that we are building our teams from, versus using them as a supplement to the staff that's here. So yeah, constantly in forecasting mode, looking way out into the future. I know that we have nurses we don't plan on having come join our workforce for another 2, 3, 5 years. So we know that there will always be space for more nurses. So there's never a 0% vacancy. So yes, using them as a long-term strategy is really important. Barbara, I see that Laura popped off.
I think we might have lost her.
Yeah, that's right. There she is.
Well, we had Sydney.
Sydney. Should we go to the next question, Sydney?
Yeah, I think so. There we go.
So, yeah, Sydney, you're on
Sydney,
mute. And here comes Laura back.
Yeah. Come on, technology.
I love it when technology works. I think I may be having a camera issue right now, but I'll let's see if I can get that down there. There we go. Apologize, everyone. Love it when technology works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what successes have you seen in your organizations with bringing international nurses?
Yeah, I think, many fun things that have been happening is that, we're learning about new cultures. And there was, I reflect back to at Thanksgiving last year, our international nurses were really curious about this Thanksgiving Day that we have, and all the feasting. So they hosted an international food fest, so that all countries were represented, and sampling of food and some relationship building. So that was really fun. So I think it's not only just helping with our workforce strategy, it's also helping build a culture of inclusivity and build a culture of diversity. So I think it's important to call those out as successes, as well as helping to drive down our retention. We have a 5% vacancy rate right now, which is 11 points lower than the national average. So we wouldn't be at that low of a vacancy if we weren't partnering with Worldwide and integrating international nurses into our workforce.
That's incredible, Joel. I mean, just the fact that not only your vacancy rate, but also the aspect of just embracing the diversity of the nurses that you have at your organization. And in some ways, it really becomes all of these nurses, international, American nurses, are all becoming just a very strong family, right? A network of individuals that are supporting and embracing one another, which is
for sure.
remarkable.
We want our workforce to be representative of our community. So we know that we're working very hard, that just even so that our workforce looks like our community. We want to bring in all those cultures from others that are in our community that haven't been represented before. So we're grateful for the partnership and for the strategy that we have with you.
That's incredible. Barbara?
Yeah, very similar again to Joel. The some of the interactions that we've seen on the units with bringing in the international nurses has really been so positive, and really kind of expanded our nurses' understanding, if you will, of nursing across the globe. Because I think it's very easy to get very fixated on this is how we do things. We're in America, we have, this way we practice, and not even thinking about how other countries might practice, or what licensure looks like, or what other places can bring into the organization. And I think that having a large contingent of international nurses as we do, it really has opened up our nurses' minds to that concept of global nursing practice and the integration of other cultures. So it really has been really positive for the units that have received large groups of the international nurses. I think another one of our successes is over 60% of our international nurses who were hired have started working and have remained in the community and been really successful in their roles and have become really integrated into those units. Like Joel, I think we're about at a 5.5 or 6% vacancy rate right now. And definitely international nurses have played a part in that. And then I think that the other thing is it's not 100% correlate, but using international nurses has helped us to drive down agency usage. We are currently less than 400 nurses across our large footprint that are agency, and kind of back in 2022, we had about 1,500. And so last year we were about 500, but again, because of our forecasting and, that kind of, preemptive planning, now we're down to 400. And a lot of that has to do with, bringing in our international nurses to help to really fill that gap. So the partnership that we've had with Worldwide and being able to bring in those direct to hires has just been crucial for us with, our vacancy rates and our agency rates to drive down costs and enhance care.
It's really,
you know what? Let me jump on that. Let me jump on that a little bit too, Barbara. We have a workforce here. I'm a CNO for one building in Davenport, Iowa. It's our flagship hospital for hospital entity here in our area. We have a workforce of 550 FTEs. So, roughly, we'll say that's roughly 700 individuals. We have a domestic traveler roster of less than 20. So because we can supplement, or we brought in, or I like to say incorporated, these direct hires into our workforce, we have shifted from having the stability of a core team versus having domestic travelers in our workforce, which was, a great solution during COVID and post-COVID, while we were recovering, trying to figure out what does it look like to ensure that we have enough staff to safely take care of our community.
And I think that's key, Joel, right? Is our international nurses are part of our core team.
Yeah.
There's no difference, and that is so important.
And to that point, one of the things at Worldwide that we've developed is a country overview over the 17 different countries that we recruit nurses from, knowing that, when nurses come to the United States, the bedside teams and the clinical managers at your organizations would benefit from seeing what does healthcare look like in that country? What is the nurse's role and responsibilities? And how do we think about onboarding them in a different way, or enhancing our onboarding process based on where the nurse is coming from? Next slide, please. So what specialties have you recruited for? And really, when you think about recruiting for nurses, international nurses, what skills, when you're interviewing these nurses, are you specifically looking for? Barbara, I'll pass it to you first.
Sure. So we primarily recruit for medical, surgical, and intermediate levels of care. We've really seen success and retention with hiring into these levels, despite maybe previous experiences or maybe what's on the nurse's resume about levels of care, because there's variations in levels of care between the countries, and not just the levels of care, but also things like technology and documentation, right? Nursing practice is nursing practice, but it's all those other things that layer into it that can have impact. So we found where we have the most success in those med-surg intermediate levels. However, saying that, if we have a nurse who has background in ICU or ED, when we're doing those recruitings, we're having very candid conversations with them that we're going to start you in these levels of care, and then we're going to create you a pathway to get you into your appropriate level of care, kind of once you've acclimated to our hospital, our policies, our technologies, our documentation, which can often be one of the things that kind of could trip an international nurse up, getting used to those things. That's just, if you're never documented within an electronic healthcare record before, you've always been on paper, it is, something different to be able to document. So that has worked really well. And again, has been a really great strategy for us to be able to support those international nurses when they're first coming in. And then from a skills perspective, we really look at their current skills and those levels of care, but also what has been their exposure with some of those advanced healthcare technologies or electronic documentation. We have a lot of our nurses who are coming from the Philippines. That's a population. We have some Filipino communities. We do, recruit a lot of Filipino nurses. And we have some that have taken assignments in other locations prior to coming to us, where maybe the technology is very similar to us. So we take a look at those skills when we're trying to look at making the appropriate assignments and placements. And that helps us with being able to create those more streamlined orientation approaches, aligning them really to their experience and their skill level that is not just reflective of their nursing practice, but also what has their exposure been to all of these other things that come into play.
Yeah, similar story. We are doing a bulk of our recruiting into our medical surgical acuity areas. But recently we have started incorporating worldwide health nurses into our intensive care unit, and they're flying. This is a great match for them. We do similar, we look for the skills represented of the patients that are in the care of our nurses here in our community, and then really kind of match them. We know that these nurses that are working with worldwide are interested in coming to the United States. So what can we do to match their skills to an opening that we would have here? So we found the most success in a variety of medical surgical arenas, but really are now into bringing some folks into our intensive care unit with a lot of success. And they're brilliant. These nurses are coming with years of experience. These are not novice nurses who are, less than a year or even less than 5 years. These folks these new colleagues are coming with 5 and 10 and 20 years of experience. Just like if I were to go to a different state to practice, there are going to be some nuances that are different, like Barbara said. So I know we're going to talk about orientation coming up, but we have to be nimble and figure out what does it look like for them to be successful. So yeah, skills, we really look at the skills that they bring, but know that even though they put on their resume or even during the interview, how their arena may look in their home country may be a little bit different than here in the United States.
Right. To your point, Joel, you're right. The international nurses that we're bringing over on average have 6 to 10 years of experience in their clinical specialty, but it may look different depending on what country they're coming from. I recently did a walking tour at one of the Bon Secours facilities, and we spoke with some cath lab nurses they came over from the UK. And their feedback to us was that the technology in the UK was far advanced from the technology that they experienced when they came to the United States, which was, a wow for me to know that the technology is so advanced there that they really had an easy time with their transition. And then to your point, we can recruit for any clinical specialties. And I'll just briefly share, I have added a clinical educator to my team, and I interviewed 15 international nurses. And we ended up putting 4 of the nurses through the visa lottery, and I ended up getting 3 of them in the lottery. So I will now have some international nurses that have deep experience in training nurses that have come from different countries. So as an example, a nurse that was in the Philippines and immigrated to the UK, I've got an educator that has deep experience with onboarding those Philippine nurses. That I think is really, it's a class of nurses, the clinical educators, that we historically have not recruited for, but I was pleasantly surprised and impressed that they were top-notch nurses, and I can't wait for them to come to the United States to work with. So
that's awesome. That's great.
Next slide.
Awesome.
Please. All right, so I'm gonna give this question first to Joel. Can you tell us about your retention rate for international nurses?
Yeah, I was really thrilled when we did a retrospective look at our retention rate with Worldwide Health. We are at 95% retention. So
incredible.
we are so grateful. You know, these folks are staying in our community. They're, you know, we've had several stories of nurses we brought over, and then their spouses who were also waiting for immigration things to occur, are also working in our hospital now too. One even as a registered nurse. So you know, not even counted in that retention rate. A total over our 5 years. You know, we had worked with another organization early on, but we're still at a 90% for our 5 years as we look back retention rate. So we are doing something right here, and I we'll get into that at the next slide. But you know, I'll say it's really about helping these new colleagues feel like they belong, they feel safe, and that they are part of us. That this isn't a trial or they aren't visiting. That they really are a colleague, just as if they were applying from this home area. So we're proud of a 95% retention rate with our Worldwide Health nurses.
That's incredible. How about you, Barbara?
Yeah, that's amazing, Joel. I don't think we're quite that high. I think we're about 85% across our footprint. I think it varies. We have a pretty large footprint across Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, and South Carolina. So I think it varies depending on where it is, but overall we're about an 85%, and very similar. You know, the nurses are, because they're part of our team, they become part of our community. Their spouses come over, their families come over. And we have very similar stories, such as Joel, where, you know, they come in and their spouse is now part of our organization in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And the ones that we might not retain, really the reason we're not retaining them is maybe they're moving to where their families might be already. Mm-hmm. So it really has nothing to do with skill or mm-hmm. fit. It's more, you know, a family decision. Mm-hmm. But yeah, our overall retention rate is about 85%.
Well, kudos to both of you. I mean, that doesn't just happen. You are doing some amazing things in order to onboard and orient these nurses. So next slide, please, Sydney. So let's now turn our direction over to what are some of the onboarding best practices that your organization has implemented. You don't have an 85 and 95% retention rate in international nurses by just looking the other way. You obviously have had a very dedicated focus to embrace these nurses and give them the best orientation process. That's why they choose to stay with you. So Barbara, why don't you go first?
Sure, absolutely. It is a you have to be very proactively thinking and strategic in your planning, and you have to have people who really want to engage and become that front person to help to support those nurses when they first come in. And it really has to begin in the interview phase, right? They have to know what to expect. What type of onboarding are you going to give me? What type of education support do you have? You know, what is that process going to look like? And then making sure that you're having that same messaging for everybody who's touching the lives of these nurses as they move all the way through the interview phase to the capture phase to they get here and they you know, have those initial conversations and trying to figure out where, you know, their housing arrangements and everything. I always say it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And we've had a lot of conversation with the teams that are really interacting with our international nurses in all of our markets. And you really have to focus on some of those basic things so that you can enable those nurses then to get to that highest level of functioning and be ready to start. You know, they have to have, you know, access to, you know, housing and resources. And so it's really important to work with, you know, Worldwide, our local operation team, our HR team. I oversee all of the nursing professional development teams, and making sure that we have structures and processes in place to help to support those basic things. Like we have booklets of information that we give to all of our new international nurses that highlight those local things in their communities that they're going to be moving to. What grocery stores do they have that offer international cuisine that's appropriate for their, their culture? Directions around town, things to do, where to shop, where can I get a car, places to avoid, those things that just help to introduce them to their communities. And I will say one of the best practices that we've put into place is I actually have in each one of our markets, one of our nursing professional development team members and an operational nurse leader will meet with that nurse as soon as they get into the community. Some of them will even go to the airport and pick them up, but they're helping to kind of show them around and giving them a resource that they can talk to, from I got here all the way through their entire career. And we've linked them up so they become those resources and those supports. I think some other best practices in working with Worldwide, we've, made sure that our international nurses, have the knowledge that they need to practice in the environment. So we kind of assign modules ahead of time. Yes, okay, I take care of a congestive heart failure patient in my country. What does that look like to take care of it, in this particular setting? And so that has really been helpful to kind of, again, making sure they're knowing what they're coming into, and to be able to answer any questions then when they get here. So they have that, that preparation. Again, going back to those reach outs from managers and the nursing teams, I have one, I love this story. I tell it all the time. So in one of my markets, her name is Rochelle. She is absolutely amazing. And she has taken on the international nurses and loves working with them. And she will take them out to dinner. She helps to facilitate the connections with the already established international nurses and making sure that they're making those linkages and connections and mentorship opportunities, which is so important. As part of a smaller community, and then obviously, part of their larger community. And having that one point of contact is really, for us is the best practice. So I'll kick it over to Joel. I've talked for a couple minutes. So
no, that's good. Yes to all of that. And I think, two other thoughts. One is we are nimble with when they come over and start, we do all those similar things where we're really kind of over communicating so that there is expectations and there's less anxiety of starting, where to park, what does it mean to go to the grocery store. But we've moved nurses around just like we would with other local nurses. If a cardiac step down unit is maybe a little too much for them, we've moved them to a medical floor or even rehabilitation, but sat down with them and said, let's think about this. Here is a palette of options. What would you like to try? Because we know that they are interested in staying. I mean, clearly with our retention rate, we want them to stay in our workforce, whatever that looks like. So being nimble and having some really focused orientation time with them so that we can pivot if we need to. And some of our international, when we've had several internationals come at one time, we've done a special session with them on how to facilitate the EMR. I know I'm a fast, the tempo of my speech is fast. So I know that we've experienced that at our EMR sessions where some of them are just we just need to slow down and go through things a little bit with a different pace. So we've done some special sessions. It's really about what does success look like? We want them to be successful. So we will be nimble and ensure that they stay in our workforce. Also, this is a great question, Laura. So thanks for giving us extra space. But we also are social together. So we've gone to baseball games and done bowling and other fun events outside of work together, so that we can get to know each other in a more casual arena, but also so that they, like you had said, Barbara, that they can connect with each other, because they may not know that there's another nurse from their home area or country, that works 3 units away on a different floor. So we are really interested in making those connections both with us on a social level as well as with each other outside of work as we can. So great question.
I think that's really incredible. And Joel, I just have to like give you kudos to your clinical leadership team. I shared with you before this call, one of your ED managers just completely embraced an international nurse and identified during the orientation that, hey, maybe another clinical unit would be a better fit. And she tried a couple clinical units and they found the right clinical unit. And that just shows how dedicated you are to the nurses that have come here and how much you embrace them. And to your point, you know, doing social events, it just takes it one step further. And I think that that's a direct reflection of why your retention is 95% for international nurses. That's a key.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
These nurses, as you know, just for the sake of those that might be listening or watching, they're direct hires, so they are skin in the game, just like every other new nurse that enters our organization. So they want to be successful, and we want them to be successful. So we'll take a look. You know, what does the best fit look like for them?
Yeah, I agree, Joel. I think that's super important. I mean, we have, you say there are direct hires. We have international nurses who are joining our shared decision-making structures, you know, and they're participating at a site level or a unit level and, you know, making decisions that are helping to guide practice. They're orienting new nurses. They become preceptors. They become charge nurses. They're completely, you know, part of the culture of the unit in which they're practicing. And it really has elevated practice, you know, having, you know, a variety of nurses from different cultures who have come into the organizations.
Yeah, agree.
I really think what both of you and your organization have developed around international nurses is really a best practice. I mean, you are definitely leaders in this space. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet.
You can tell this is a question that we liked, right?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give to an organization that is just starting out on this journey of bringing direct hire international nurses?
Yeah, I'm going to say just one thing, and that's have patience, because it doesn't happen overnight. You know, if you're interested in using international nurses or partnering so that international nurses can be a part of your workforce, it's going to take time. And we know when we did interviews with some of our new colleagues 2 and 3 years ago, you know, that they would be here. But there's other strategies that you can connect with Worldwide Health about on how to have nurses come over a little bit more quickly. Using different visa strategies. So we won't get into that now, but you know, have patience, I think would be my advice. And also be nimble. I said that before, but you know, be willing to be flexible with you know, their experience may sound like it's the same in relation to a unit that they're matched up against, but then when they get here, we may just have to look and say, not the best fit. So what does a fit look like?
I would agree. Nimble, be agile. I would say another thing is, you know, again, the forecasting and being mindful of, you know, working with, you know, Worldwide to ensure that you have that pipeline and that you have nurses coming in on a consistent basis. And that really does help. And then really ensuring that you have your teams, you're supporting your teams to be able to have that commitment and that capacity to be able to welcome and support international nurses. And so that they know what to expect and they can then provide that direct support to the international nurses and make them part of the community and part of the culture. And so, you know, setting those expectations and really, again, having those point people. I think that was been one of our biggest successes in all of our sites is we have a point person, and that point person owns making sure that onboarding of that international nurse is successful and that they have somebody that they can go to if they're having a struggle or we need to, you know, take a look. Do you want to go to a different area? Are you ready to move up to, you know, an intensive care or an ED area? Or do you want to try a different experience? They feel comfortable having those conversations. So it's, that communication. And then I'm just going to say it again, it's Maslow, right? So making sure you have your basic things in line and in order so that they can, accelerate and become just truly stars within the organization.
Yep, agreed.
That's wonderful. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to thank Joel and Barbara. Great discussion. So impressed by what both of you have developed at your organizations. We're going to turn it over to any questions. So there is a statement in here from Kate Christmas, and she's saying that's so great, not just a clinical orientation, but cultural orientation to help the nurse and family settle in. Love the booklet idea.
Mm-hmm. So important.
So important.
If you have any questions, you can please type them in the chat.
I have to say for the booklet, while we're waiting, if there's any other questions, is having the resources then also for the existing staff. So we have booklets to help to support the international nurse, but we also have booklets that help to support the staff. And we're using some of the information from the worldwide about those different cultures. And we have that available for our staff so that they can familiarize themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one other thought too, not related to the booklet, but this is a strategy that we're using for workforce, not the only strategy. So right. I think that, as we think about workforce and what does that look like in the future, we have to be creative and think outside the box. And so this definitely is, one thing that I think most of us, especially larger organizations, should be thinking about and should be the arena that we're getting in to help support.
Well said. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Again, I just want to personally thank both you, Joel, and Barbara. It was an enlightening conversation, and I greatly appreciate your time today.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. You too.